longer a denier. I'm a skeptic of elections. Wow. Stuff is starting to hit the fan. We're going to get to the bottom of a lot of that. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk about elections and being an election skeptic versus a denier. Here today on the DPB show. Thanks for joining me. Thursday, can't believe it. We're approaching Valentine's Day. Hey, if you haven't gone out and gotten your Valentine something special, you better do that. I'm going to ask Chris the covenant question of, has he been to the Hallmark store yet to get his Valentine Sue of Valentine yet or not? So hopefully he has. But we got a lot to cover today. Chris shared with me a video that's pretty cool. It's short, and it gives us an impression of why it is people are leaving the craziness of Democrat-run states, leftist-run states, and how quickly they exit the state after they're not favorable to it. We're gonna cover a little bit about elections. We're gonna cover a little bit about all the other craziness that continues to go on day in, day out. It comes at such a rate. If your defense is for voter ID or showing proof of citizenship is that you can't get proper documentation, you can't, you're a woman who married and now you have a name and blah, 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 blah. How have you functioned up till this point? We're going to get down to the nitty gritty on all this. It's funny because it's almost as if they don't have any real solutions to solving the problems that we truly have. And with that said, it doesn't stop the Trump train. The Trump train is moving at a rate, and we're going to get Chris's opinion on how things are going. We talked about this on Tuesday. Inflation down, obviously is down. Unemployment is up. The stock market is hitting record highs, and we're going to get in on all that here today on the DPB show. Go out, like, subscribe, share, Rumble, YouTube, X, 2 Facebook accounts, the DPB show, and my personal page, David Paul Blumenshine. Always appreciate there. Hi there, Donovan. Oh, and I are both watching today. Appreciate you guys. You have a new subscriber too. Wow. Well, thank you, Donovan, for that. Thanks, Pam. Obviously, always appreciate you. The taxes proposed for Illinois are ridiculous. Well, you know what, Pam? That's what it's about. Right, Chris? It's about the economy. It's always going to be about the
economy. I was listening to the radio today and the projections for Illinois' actual employment and economy is to underperform the national average. But that shouldn't surprise anybody with all the taxes and regulation that is chasing businesses out of the state and the upper income bracket people as well.
Did you say that as if you were, from a different state? Did you put an S on the end of Illinois and say Illinois?
I did because it was possessive.
Illinois. Okay.
Yes. I did. When I said it, I oh my gosh, he's going to think that I'm talking like somebody from out of state.
From Florida. That's how, or Texas. You people are from Illinois?
It was the possessive. You have to do an S if you're going to do possessive. So Illinois.
There you go. Well, here's proof to it. Chris shared this video earlier with me. It comes from, I think it's Defiant. Oh, hold on. Let me look. Just, I want to make sure we give a shout out where a shout out is due. Got to scroll up a little bit. Defiant L apostrophe S, kind of like Illinois, but not apostrophe. Which state do people regret moving to the most? And I think you're going to obviously find this to be very interesting.
Which state do people regret moving to the most in the U.S.? Firstly, the state where people are most happy after moving to is Tennessee. But here are the top 5 states people regret moving to the most. At number 5, it's California. Around 59% of people who move there decide to leave again. At number 4, it's Connecticut. About 60% of people who move there leave. It's not very cheap to live in this small state. At number 3, it's New York. About 63% of movers decided to leave. The cost of living and busy lifestyle make it hard for many to stay here. At number 2, we got Illinois. Around 67% of movers leave after a while here. Many people don't like the high taxes and the cold winters. And finally, at number 1, this state tops the list, with a whopping 70% of people leaving after moving there. It's super expensive, and the bad weather doesn't help either. It's New Jersey. Which state do people regret moving to the most in the U.S.? Firstly, the state where people are most happy after moving to is Tennessee. But here are the top 5 states people regret moving to the most.
Hit the stop button. There we go.
There you go.
All right. Boy, that was a runaway video. Well, there it is. I mean, obviously, we're not number 1, we're number 2. But, obviously that's in the top 5. California, New York.
A thin gruel.
Well, and ultimately, the fascinating thing about that is study after study. I mean, they track this, and yet the governor of Illinois, King Pritzker, not Governor King Pritzker, comes out and basically deny, lie, and pretends that this is all, it's all roses, right? Everything's coming up beautiful. We're in a great position based on, his recovery program. We're going to lead the nation. And of course, all of this is posturing for his run for president in 2028, which I don't think he has a chance. However, James Carville says that he's a 12-1 bet. But ultimately, he has to win the race for governor. So he's got to overcome that hurdle first and foremost. That's where we, the people of Illinois, can do something about it. We can actually give a resounding message to JB that he can't be the governor of Illinois anymore. So if he can't be the governor of Illinois, he sure can't be the president of the United States. Not that any Democrat candidate at this time, I don't believe there is a formidable opponent to take on whomever. And I believe that's going to be JD Vance. And we're going to start talking about that, right? Because the more you move into the second year of the presidency of an incumbent president, which, Trump obviously can't run for a third term, or maybe he can. I don't know. We'll let him decide that. There you go. I said it.
Yeah.
But so JD Vance, Marco Rubio possibly as a ticket, Ron DeSantis is in there. There's a whole plethora of other people, but JB Pritzker doesn't have a chance against them. Obviously, we're in the top 5, JB. You're going to have to figure out something else as far as talking points to get yourself out of this. The economy's imploding. The money you've spent on illegal aliens in the excess of billions of dollars is obviously coming back to haunt you. And ultimately,
the Safety Act hasn't done much to improve the crime level in the state.
No. It hasn't. And illegal, the funding of Medicaid for illegal immigrants and housing and debit cards and everything else is not helped the electorate, because now all eyes are focused on, which is the big topic of today, election skeptics versus election deniers. Chris, they have to change up the messaging, because in Fulton County, a judge has ruled on the FBI's ability to go in there and capture some documents and present those as, to bring that information forward to the courts. And now the courts are kind of starting to realize, well, maybe we should have back in 2020, we should have, or 2021, we should have really listened and heeded what people were saying, that there was issues, indiscrepancies, anomalies, whatever you want to call it, irregularities to the counting of ballots, especially when you look at the facts that Joe Biden lost a lot of the counties that you have to win in order to win the presidency. He lost those bellwether counties. He lost a lot of ground, but yet somehow managed more votes than any other presidential candidate in the history of the United States of America. And so it does bring out, the whole point was stop the steal, right? That's what we believed was going on. A lot of people pushed for that. I sat there and was in election headquarters at the radio station back in the day of 2020, looking at 3 monitors, knowing that the election had seized up. They stopped counting. I mean, right before your very eyes, you could see, wait a minute, something's going on, because Trump was in a position to win the election again.
Yeah, it was almost an identical election to 2016. In 2016, it was clear that Trump was going to win. A lot of people stayed up till 4 a.m. or whatnot. I went to bed early knowing he won. Once those early swing states started coming through, and it really was set up the same way, but they had used those mail-in ballots, and they, when you have an attack on somebody, in the military, you have to prep the field of battle before, and so the Democrats were preparing the field of battle before by telling people, wait a minute, those numbers you see at the beginning of the evening, ignore those. Those aren't the final ones. We're gonna, there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes, so don't get too upset if things change. So they were setting the battlefield for people to accept a sudden change in the outcome, in the middle of the night. So it wasn't. They had that plan. They told you what they're going to do, and then there's reporting on people who had talked about how they're going to do that. So there's a lot of reporting. In addition to Fulton County, they're getting some voting machines from Puerto Rico, so that's very interesting. I've never been a big machine guy, but there it is. They're also working with the CIA now to try and get information on how people would manipulate elections. And so that's interesting. So there's a big panic that's going on. And what happened is people were so desperate to make the appearance of fair elections and keep that going, that they weren't willing to look to see if there was something wrong with the elections. And that's, we're finally breaking through that barrier 4 years later.
Well, it's interesting you bring up 2016, because I got a little clip from 2016. This was put together by Newsbusters, MRC. I don't know if you ever look into their work, but they do a lot of good work. But I'll just go ahead and add this to the stage real quick, blow it up. Trump's win and the top media meltdowns. I think this is worthy of a play. It is a little long, but I think, you know what, to kind of really grasp what Chris was talking about, this is how these people responded to Trump's victory in 2016.
This is the time for real wisdom. Lightning round.
If Trump wins, how about bursting into tears and screaming fuck for the next 45 minutes?
Well, America is crying tonight. I'm not sure how much of America, but a very, very significant portion. And I mean literally crying.
Everybody is crying and so upset. And it is the end of their world.
Feels like the end of the world.
Or on Lifetime last night, and I was slowly getting drunk is what happened to me.
How do we explain how this is possible?
How did this happen? Experienced politician versus racist fake gynecologist.
Get your abortions now, because we're going to be fucked, and we're going to have to live with it.
You're awake, by the way. You're not having a terrible, terrible dream. Also, you're not dead and you haven't gone to hell. This is your life now. This is our election now. This is us. This is our country.
This is a different Earth today than it was 24 hours ago. It's a different place. Cause it just is different.
The woman who President Obama called the most qualified person ever to run for the White House couldn't break through. The question remains, who can?
Deeper concerns tonight that the world's shining light of democracy has gone dark.
Decency lost last night, And that's what's so hurtful about this.
This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president in part. And that's the part where the pain comes.
I kind of push back against the advancement of African Americans, of Hispanics, of women, of Muslim Americans.
It is
actually, Chris, that happens, but I mean, that was a good video, but that was not necessarily the video that I thought that I was grabbing.
Yeah.
But go ahead. You were going to say.
Well, what's interesting as an investment geek, I was noting the different time periods during the night where they were announcing the results. And at the beginning of the night, people thought, oh my gosh, Trump's going to get elected and sell stocks. And so if you look at some of those screens, you saw the S&P 500 was down 45 points. And at that point, the S&P was about half of what it is today. So those were real large percentages decrease. And then by morning, the market had turned around and realized Trump's going to be great for the economy. And the market was up by the opening on the day after election night. So that was kind of interesting as well, what I picked up out of that.
Well, I thought I could find it. It actually was a really good video where the percentage started to change of the possibility that, it started out at the beginning of the night that there was no way, no chance that Trump was even going to come close to beating Hillary Clinton. But as the night wore on, these commentators.
It was real early, though. It was really early because Florida has their act together. So they had pretty good results early on. So that was swing state number one. It's no longer a swing state. It's pretty red. But at that time, it was considered a swing state. And then you saw Pennsylvania and Georgia were definitely in the Trump category. And once that happened, I realized it was pretty much over for Hillary because she wasn't going to be able to come back and start all of a sudden, winning all these swing states. Unlike what happened when Biden ran, in the middle of the night, all of a sudden he started winning all these swing states by.
Yeah, the push came in. The truck started delivering boxes of ballots and things were happening and counting ballots that might not necessarily have been true ballots. And I'm just saying that. I mean, I don't have any proof of that, but it seems like that is what they are now investigating. That's hence the reason they picked up over.
There are people, there are so many claims that there's people claiming that some of those ballots in Fulton County were filled in with printer toner.
Yeah.
And that just means they were printing them out and
sending
them in. Yeah. They weren't filling them out like they're, required.
And suspicious deliveries from crossing state lines with ballots. That was the interesting thing that is being reported now. There is just so much out there. I was hopeful to find this video, but I don't think I'm going to be able.
Well, I just feel like the judges were so adamant about trying to protect the integrity of the elections, despite the fact that there was no integrity to protect. And so they were using standing and all kinds of other excuses for not following through. They also were afraid because they couldn't see, well, what would be the remedy if they decided that this election was fraudulent. So they and who was the worst was Bill Barr. He was in there telling everybody this is the best election ever, despite the fact that his own people were telling him that there were irregularities, and he refused to go after them because, again, here's another person. Well, we got to stick with the status quo and pretend that our elections are flawless and we can't even look into a potential for fraud. Well, if your elections are that weak that you can't even look into the question of whether there's fraud, then they're pretty weak to begin with.
I just saw Rachel Maddow. I know she was part of that other video. I mean, it was fascinating. And I apologize. I thought I had. I mean, there's screaming Karens and all this about.
Well, you have that one, the classic picture of that one lady screaming at the sky, and clearly, clearly a liberal. But
Well, it is fascinating, and I do have a video that deals with the voter ID, proof of citizenship. I want to get to that. I don't want to lose sight of what the show is about today, because we are election skeptics now rather than deniers. They've softened the terminology because it does look like they are in for a change of venue again, change of everything. The more we dig, the deeper we dig, the more time that we wait, the evidence starts presenting itself. Where was the evidence? Well, in Fulton County, it was in a warehouse, and it was restricted from people having access to it. They had court orders to not allow anybody to grab those boxes, and then obviously they had to allow the DOJ to get in there through the FBI and start to sniff around. And quickly, it was very evident what it was they were denying, what we were denying, which is that, things might not have been the way they appeared to be. Hence the phone call between Donald J. Trump and the Secretary of State, Rossberger, that, the perfect call, according to Donald Trump, that he was looking for, where are those other 11,000 votes that I need? It sounds like something happened that, doesn't seem right. So he had every reason to be out there, as we all do. When you say deniers, it's protected in the First Amendment, free speech. You can question. I was listening to, before the show started, listening to a little bit of Dan Bongino, and he's right. We're protected by the Constitution of the United States of America, that we have the ability to say, you know what, it doesn't seem like this is going in the right direction, or this doesn't seem like this is on the up and up. It's no different than the latest Nick Shirley journalist, citizen journalist, who's in there asking tough questions and uncovering information that it so happens the legacy media, the propaganda media, is unwilling to go and ask. How is it that we've ended up where we have, in the position we have, in some of these states? And I believe that California obviously is next, and Illinois is going to be here in the first, if not the second quarter of this year. So, yeah, I think we beat that up. I do want to get to the markets, Chris, and I think I have a video of that. Obviously, a little disjointed today with my videos, but you probably know more than I know about what things are happening. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about what is transpiring with the job numbers yesterday, and what was believed to be the case versus what actually is.
Well, what happened yesterday was that the unemployment numbers came out, and then the employment numbers came out as well. And we created a lot more jobs than we expected. And so that was a positive story. The other thing that's happening is that we're getting rid of a lot of government jobs and putting in private sector jobs. So that's really important as well. So during the Biden administration, they were pumping up the numbers two different ways. One, they were just fraudulently reporting them. And so you saw these millions of jobs disappear in the revisions, which is why they fired the person who was in charge of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Unfortunately, the Republicans haven't managed to get the replacement for that person installed and confirmed. So what was happening was they were fraudulently creating numbers, and then on top of that, most of the numbers were increases in job or government jobs, and then on top of that, the number of people getting jobs were almost exclusively foreign-born people. So all those millions of illegal immigrants coming across the border were all getting low-paying jobs and then being subsidized by the government to bring their salaries up to some livable wage. And meanwhile, the companies were benefiting from that aspect of it. So those were really the things that were going on that have ended. And now we've got much more solid employment numbers, and that's not all smoke and mirrors based on government spending.
Okay. I thought I had this loaded up on CNBC. Let's see if I can get to that video. You shared it.
Rick Santelli, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was once again my faux pas. I thought I had this loaded up, and now it's.
Well, while you're loading it up, there's some other good news that just came out after the market closed today, and that Rivian announced some better than expected earnings, and they're going to boost up their production. So that should be good for our local economy here. So that's good news.
Well, that is good news. How do you think, I was thinking about this. Rivian tops Q4 expectations, expects losses to continue amidst production. Actually, when I popped that up on screen, I was obviously looking for another video, but you know what? We are going to call an audible and go with the Rivian, because I was thinking about that, Chris, as I drive by and I see all those Amazon Prime delivery vehicles that are strewn out there. And I get it. The infrastructure is not there to accommodate those vehicles. That you have to have charging stations. And if you don't have charging stations, you're not going to have the ability to put those into operation. And that's where things are kind of falling short right now, is that those vehicles are sitting on pavement versus being used. And of course, I know that they need those vehicles because I see plenty of used contractor vehicles running packages and deliveries around versus prime vehicles. They're trying to find any vehicle they can. And this is the story that Chris is actually mentioning. That Rivian tops Q4 expectations, expects losses to continue amid production increase. So how will Rivian truly fare, do you believe?
Well, remember, this is an investment advice.
Yeah.
So that's where I got to put in that little adage. But what we've seen in the big automakers is they're starting to get out of the business. So Ford announced earnings earlier in the week, or maybe it was early or late last week, and they're just getting slaughtered by their electric car portion of the company. And so, if hopefully enough of those companies pull out of that market and leave Rivian as the niche market for those types of trucks, and they can survive. But it looks pretty tough for them. They're probably going to have to do more fundraising along the way to stay in business, and hopefully at some point they reach a break-even number. But it's going to be a tough slog for them to make money, for sure.
Well, it looks like there's a lot of articles, and I probably should have just put Rick Santelli's name in there rather than CNBC, because Lord knows I didn't realize they keep it active on their X page, and they have a lot of commentary that they put out there, and you probably sit there and get worn out by this all day. I personally just am getting worn out looking at this. I didn't realize
it's just a lot going on, because it's international, it's every company, it's every CEO, I saw some of the talk about auctions for treasuries.
Well, speak into that. I don't think that requires a disclaimer. If you speak into that, Chris, how interrelated are all of these variables politically, economically, socially, culturally? How does that impact, the world markets and the reports that we're seeing out of the growth here in the United States?
It's dramatic. So, and it all depends also on how detailed you want to get. So if you're interested in natural gas futures, or if you're interested in coal companies, or you're interested in something like that, the announcement that they made today about eliminating the CO2 regulations is mammoth. And then because energy goes into just about everything, it's also extremely important. And then it goes to China. So if we were to decide that we're going to just toss aside all this solar panels and wind farms and all those kind of things, China would be in a world of hurt, because they've based their whole economy assuming that they're going to monopolize those industries. And if they just disappear overnight, that would be devastating for their economy. And their economy is not in great shape as it is. And so all these factors, the question is, and no one really knows the answer. That's why for every buyer in the market, there's a seller in the market. So everybody has their own calculation based on how they're viewing all these variables and putting them together and determining how they work. And so it's a very complex system, and there's no 100% way to know the future, but people are trying to use each of these little pieces as a mosaic to put together what they think is going to happen in the future, and see if the price of the securities that are out there are overvalued or undervalued, and then making investment decisions and other types of investments to take advantage of those, what they consider discrepancies in the marketplace. If you go to the University of Chicago and look at their school of investment, they think that pretty much all the information is always in the price of the securities, but there's enough evidence to show that that's not always the case. So it's definitely a complex system, and there's a lot to know. As you've seen with some of the deregulation and how it's improved companies' earnings, and it allows for more development of manufacturing here in the United States. So there's all these things have some impact, and the question is, for some companies, they have major impacts. For some, it's minor. Some, it's more just what it does overall for the economy in general.
Well, I didn't find Squawk Box, but I always can rely upon Eric Doherty. Give a shout out to Eric on X. He covered this. I kind of like this because I think it's 41 seconds, which allows us to get right into the midst of it. And basically, Rick Santelli goes total victory lap on the experts who doubted President Trump after U.S. doubles job expectations. There's the crying, hysterically laughy face. I love it. Thank you, Eric Doherty, because we need to bring some levity to this craziness. All these naysayers continue to be negative. Dow at 50K says you've all been wrong. Holding an umbrella. Nobody's going to rain on my parade. What else do they have to say? GDP is going to take a big ramp up. And we talked about this on Tuesday, Chris. This is what we said. We think things are going to continue to build and build and build. And the U.S. is leading the way. This is a glorious win. Let's hear it from the experts.
Say that nobody's going to rain on my parade. And these numbers are what they are. And 50K. I made this hat 2 months ago. And the reason I made it is for exactly a day like today. All these naysayers steeped in politics continue to be negative. That's okay. Because 50K says you've all been wrong. You keep from going in the water even though it's very hot outside. I say all the investment gurus out there, jump in the markets in the U.S. because global GDP is going to take a big ramp up, and the U.S. is leading the way.
Yeah, I wonder if he truly wears that hat.
Yeah. Well, who else? There was another person who predicted that, and that was Peter Navarro.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what his title is in the Trump administration.
Whether he's a senior advisor.
Yeah, senior advisor of some kind. So he was predicting that way back then. So it wasn't totally unexpected. And when you look at the Atlanta, I talk about this a lot. So if you're out there and you want to see what's a good expectation for GDP growth for the next quarter, you can use the Atlanta Fed Now model, and they've done a really great job. And what you've seen is all throughout the quarter, all the street economists, all too pessimistic, they've constantly been raising their estimates as time goes on, trying to match what the model from the Fed knew all along, that we're going to have 3.5–4% GDP growth for the fourth quarter. And then, we're looking at first quarter, we're going to start to see improvement in people buying stuff with all that money they're getting in their refunds. So all those things look positive for the market going forward. And if we start to actually use cheaper, we could actually see declines in energy prices for electricity if we start to take advantage of the coal and natural gas that we have in this country. Interestingly enough, we have seen the weakness of this green energy plan, and we saw it during a couple of weeks ago when we had those terrible storms in the Northeast. The green energy production just fell off, and what they had like 2 or 3% of all their wind and solar was actually working. But what they had to do was they had to add a lot of oil because they've refused to build natural gas pipelines. So they've used oil, ended up being 39% of all the electricity generated in New England area. So that's about as dirty as you can get. And then of the green energy, most of it came from burning refuse and wood.
Oh boy.
So those are nice clean energies as well. So it's ridiculous what
and they're losing ground. Obviously, it takes a lot to get things back up to speed. I know in Venezuela, they are in the process of getting production online. Chris Wright, I saw an interview with him, and he was down there. That's Secretary of the Department of Energy, Chris Wright. And
he's really good. So he's done a great job.
All right, here we go. I just want to make sure that we fact check ourselves. Peter Navarro is an American economist and a senior counselor for trade and manufacturing to President Donald J. Trump, having served in this role since January 2025. He was previously the director of the Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy during Trump's first administration. And lo and behold, first administration from 2017 to 2021, known for his protectionist trade, but also known for the fact that he had to serve a little time because he put out a report, and I don't know if they cover it here. Navarro has faced legal challenges, including a conviction for contempt of Congress. Now, isn't it funny that he received a conviction and was put in prison for contempt of Congress in 2023, related to his refusal to comply with subpoenas during investigations into the January 6th Capitol attack. He served a 4-month prison sentence, becoming the first former White House official imprisoned for such a conviction. The only reason I bring that up and wanted to scroll down is because there's a certain ex-president and a certain ex-presidential candidate who also was the Secretary of State, who also was subpoenaed to appear before Congress and involving the Epstein files. And they haven't made their way to appear in those on those subpoenas, which I find fascinating. Guys like Steve Bannon, he did time. I think Steve did.
Yeah, and they didn't go to Club Fed either. They went to real prison.
Yeah,
those were high-level prisons that they sent them to because they wanted to intimidate them, and they were hoping that maybe they would, get eliminated.
Well, and it goes to show you the obviously end justice for you, but not for me. And it's a skewed system. It obviously is a system in the judicial sense of the word that isn't fair. And justice should be blind, but yet justice seems to only find its way to those of us who believe in the values of a constitutional republic. That is, we don't want to have people like us out there voicing our opinions. Peter Navarro actually put together the Navarro report.
Mhm.
I'm not going to pull it up. I read it. I used to have a copy of it. It's extensive, but it got excused away once again because he was an election denier.
Right. Well, and
even though he really was an election skeptic.
When you look at statistically, the types of things that he covered were different counties where if you won the majority of these counties in the past, you'd always won the election.
Yes.
The states, all these other things that were just coincidences that, for the first time ever, Biden was able to overcome all of these things that no one else had ever come. So he was really the greatest candidate ever to run as president, if you believe what the leftists are telling you about the election. He was the guy that had rallies where they drew circles so that make sure that everybody stayed away from each other for COVID, and 5 or 10 people showed up. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And then for him to suddenly get more votes than anybody ever by a huge margin is just outrageous.
And I know that I'd like to grab that video because it's very interesting, where they cover a lot of what Chris has just explained with Peter Navarro's report, the Navarro report. But go out there and look at it. I'm going to try putting it up. I don't have Mrs. Producer here today. She has not been with us for a couple weeks because yours truly is. We're going through the second greatest traumatic event you will go through in your life, outside of a death in your family. And I've known this for years because I was steeped in it in my career in real estate, especially residential real estate, is moving. Moving will test you to your limits. Because once again, we're all kind of homebodies, right? We like to have a home and we like to stay in our home, and we like to, have the security, when we put the garage door down, front door is locked, back door is locked. There's a sense of security. And so when you start disrupting that process and really moving your life, and like we are right now, it causes a lot of trauma. And it should be traumatic because we shouldn't do it very often. Some people move often. Myself, I counted at one time we moved, I don't know, it was 29 times between K and 12, which when you are confronted with the moving your family 29 times, like my family was, we were gypsies, yes, in a roundabout way, and we had to make friends. So it did allow us to quickly adapt, overcome, box things up, unpack things, move. I learned some of my moving skills from all of those moves. So it helped. Anyhow, I do want to hit upon this before we end the show today, because it is the essence of what we're here today to talk about is election skeptics. That's what they now have called us, because the wheels are coming off the proverbial leftist radical bus, and they are finding their way because now they have excuses like this. And I'm going to bring this on stage because Scott Jennings, it's funny because all it is talking over one another, which is really sad because they never let each other finish, because they don't want to hear it, because they know they're not in the right, and they don't have any defense. But this is classic. Listen to Scott Jennings, what this lady is talking about, the fact that there's a lot of obstacles for people getting proper verification so they can show proof of citizenship or get an ID.
He is actually championing a bill that actually would take voting rights away from a lot of Black people in this country.
Wait, what voting rights is he taking away from Black voters?
Oh, if we look at
the SAVE Act?
the SAVE Act, that's
Are you
exactly what
talking
we're talking about. That is actually going to continue to disenfranchise overwhelmingly a lot of people of color. There are so many civil rights organizations that have run the data. If we look at the way that it is going to disenfranchise Black voters, it's the same reason why Chuck Schumer called it Jim Crow 2.0.
So-
This is the same president. If we want to
You
continue,
haven't said how yet.
I am talking about it.
I am talking about it. No, you're not.
No, you're just making up stuff. You're saying that somebody said something
kind of an idiom,
and
right?
you don't really
You
have
wanna
anything to say
that
about it.
People have to prove that they are citizens, that they have to prove with a voter ID. The reality
He's gonna
is
get
you're
into that here in a second.
layering what is a constitutional right for the American people and making it harder for people to vote in this country, and it's going to
Does it-
disenfranchise
does it-
Black voters.
Concern you that you're making all these claims? You've yet to lay out how it's hurting anyone, but 76% of Black voters think we should show an ID to vote. 80% of Hispanic voters, 83% of the American people. Are you saying that Black voters
The
are
SAVE
too
Act
dumb to
isn't
know
just,
what's good for them? I
the
mean, it
SAVE Act
sounds
isn't just
pretty,
about
it sounds pretty condescending
just
to me.
God.
It's one of the dumbest people on TV. I have a hard time listening to her. She just
And I'm going to pause it there for a second because we're about halfway through this, and I know it's painful. But you obviously, for those of us, or for those skeptics out there, because we all should be a little skeptical, but I'm talking about the people on the left. This is a show now on CNN. This is CNN trying to defend this garbage, which it's great to use CNN because we always get accused of being Fox watchers, which I spend very little time, if any time, on Fox News. In fact, if anything, I believe that Fox News at times can be just as progressive as CNN or Politico or any of the other ones. I seek out information from independent source, citizen journalists, because we are the media now, and I believe that. Nick Shirley has proved that we have the ability to go and find information. This is different than what we were sharing on the financial numbers of the current state of the economy. The Squawk Box CNBC, obviously I'm not a big fan of any of the NBC, but when it comes to Rick Santelli, and I do say his name right, don't I, Chris?
Santelli, yeah.
Santelli.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain guys out there that are conservative and operating within the parameters of these people who have lost their minds. Scott Jennings being one of it. And I think Scott Jennings is brilliant for how he handles these people. I want to continue to play this.
Yeah.
This is good.
So it doesn't. I actually.
It also makes it very hard for married women who
I was just going to say. We talked about this
young
before.
people,
By the way,
poor
it's not.
voters.
It actually. There's an argument to be made that red state voters, women, poor white voters could be just as.
I know you think they're dumb too, don't you?
Young
I mean, that's the thing.
No.
These arguments.
No, please don't. No, you listen.
Please.
What? I didn't say that. Yeah, you did.
Please don't be putting words in my mouth, or please don't be repeating the words I just said.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the facts on this. So the numbers are roughly 11% of people of color don't have the proper documentation. Roughly 8% of white people don't have the same documentation. So we're talking about a 3% difference. And when you look at the size of the number, there's actually more white voters who would be impacted than people of color voters. So let's, from that perspective, it's a stupid argument. And the fact is that when you're say, oh, well, it's married women are going to be disproportionately a problem. Well, that again, from a political perspective, that's a wash at best in terms of voting overall. So right there, so that's number one. None of the math adds up for them to say that it's even going to have any impact on the election whatsoever. Then second of all, when you look at how they view the arrests of the people that ICE has arrested, and we're talking about 400,000 people that ICE has arrested, their big complaint is only 14% of the people were arrested for violent crimes. And well, but all of a sudden 14% is a weak number, but 11%'s a game changer. They got that wrong again. So that can't work. Not to mention there's a lot of other issues in their stat about that 14% that's really horrible in terms of what they really want to argue. They really want to argue that child pornography is fine. It's not a violent crime, so let it happen and keep those people in the country. But that's another losing argument that they're on.
Yeah, well, they're on the side of all the losing arguments when it comes to crime, when it comes to education, when it comes to energy, when it comes to financial responsibility, all of the things, which is why they're having the meltdown.
Yeah,
Chris, and I think this all ties in the voting because they see the writing on the wall. They needed to come up with something that they could really propel themselves into the midterms with. And all of these arguments, which they've tried over and over again, the pedophilia, Trump was on Epstein Island, which really to the contrary, because the one president who has released the Epstein files is President Donald J. Trump. It's his DOJ that released the Epstein's files. But it's time after time. He's a racist. He's a misogynist. They tried to incarcerate him. They needed him in jail because that was the only way they were going to possibly win the 2024 election. All of these things. Now, as we speed through February and we run towards the primaries and then towards the general, they've got to come up with something. And ultimately, you would think that they would have already uncovered what it is, the strategy, and maybe they're going to unveil it. I just don't believe they have anyone. What's the guy's name? Ford, that's on the 5 sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're
It's
talking
not Henry. It's not Henry, but he was
No, Harold.
Harold.
Yeah.
It was I knew it was an H. Harold.
Yeah.
Now, there's a level-headed Democrat who I don't agree with him, but at least I can listen to him. John Fetterman, who at first I was a little suspect of him, but I believed, like most talking points or narratives that come out of the left, that they were all making up the fact that this guy suffered a major stroke and ended up having a ton of problems. Well, that was actually true.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out to believe John, obviously, Senator Fetterman, recovered from that. And it's amazing. I don't necessarily agree with him all the time.
Well,
but
I think
the least logic.
As somebody who's lived through that,
yes,
I think it changes your outlook on life, and I think you see that in his
demeanor.
When you see him, in his demeanor, and when you see him interviewed, and when he talks about and what he thinks is important as a society. So I think it's impacted him. I think the issue is I don't think the Democrats feel like they need voters. They don't need to convince anybody. They have a base that they have that's going to vote for them no matter what. And they've also spent a lot of time gaming the election system in terms of not only ability to steal votes and fraudulently create votes out of thin air from people.
We're just only skeptical. We're not talking about stopping the steal.
Exactly. But then when you look at how these districts are done, there aren't a whole lot of districts left in the country that are actually open competitions. So that's why I don't know the name of the lady. Another socialist beat out one of the incumbent Democrat representatives to run for House of Representatives in New Jersey. And Karl Rove's like, oh, well, that's going to show the country that's where the party's trending. Well, in that district, it's not going to matter because
I'll ask the Scott Jennings question. How? I mean, they basically position themselves through the mass migration or the open borders policies. They have been building strategically these congressional districts, these county board districts, whatever the district is.
Right.
They have been gerrymandering and creating the ability to try to take back Congress. Right now, that's their only play. If they can't get the House of Representatives in November of 2026, it's all over for them.
Well, the other thing that the other strategy that they have is to lie to the public and make people believe, and that's where this whole affordability issue is coming into play. And it's also, they're trying to make people fearful of their jobs, and the whole AI situation isn't helping with that. So when the guy that on CNN that always does all the polling,
yeah,
the job numbers for Trump's economy have really sunk over the last few months. Well, since he took office, the people's view on how he's handling the economy has really declined, and a lot of that's because, as you point out, when you look at how these economic releases and the predictions on the economic releases, well, you'll have 50 out of 50 economists significantly underestimating how good the economy is. And if you have that for long enough, the people think that that's the reality because they don't necessarily see what the actual number is. Or when the number comes out, people like Steve Leisman will say, oh, well, that's a false number. It'll get revised away, or just wait for next quarter or whatnot. So there's a constant beating down of these numbers. And of course, on CNBC, they have, you saw that female economist along there when they're talking about the employment numbers. Well, of course, she was a Biden economic person, so of course everything that she says is going to be negative on the economy. They were kind enough to have somebody from Heritage who says nice things about it, but yeah, that's the guy. He was really going off on Trump's poor numbers regarding the economy.
This 75%, 76%, 76%,
It goes up.
76%,
It goes up.
81%, and then 83% in the last year of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID.
Well, 75% of Democrats believe in
Yeah,
that.
normally you might expect.
Well, and the thing is, he's going to cover that. I just saw it on this. How many Democrats favor it? Your question. Let's just scroll up real quick.
Yeah, there you go. Well, there on that one, it was 71%.
Yeah, Pew Research Center 2025 include independents who lean Democrat or Republican. 71% of Democrats. 71%. I think that's larger than a majority.
Yeah. And then when you look at independents, it's even how many of that's the questions. Why is this race even competitive when you look at how many of these topics and positions do Democrats take that are 20% positive? They're in favor of men and women's sports. They're in favor of this. They're in favor of keeping every illegal alien. they're in favor of getting rid of ICE. The positions
they're in favor of Sad Bunny being able to violate FCC regulations and rules and use gross, inappropriate language. I don't care what you're
80% of the people didn't know what he said, so I guess
but just because you say it in a foreign language doesn't mean that it doesn't violate the norms of decency that we hope that the network television stations would adhere to. Because once you put the translator on that, which most kids in junior high know how to use the translator button, and you start seeing what exactly he said and how in the world that could ever be. But this is what they stand for. They think that that's free speech. It's not free speech.
Right.
You can't go out.
Well, they want it. They're going after. They're doing the same thing they did last time. That didn't win them in the election, but they're going after they're claiming that everybody's a Nazi, fascist, and that we're killing innocent protesters. Well, let's look at that as a whole. When you go to war with somebody, you know you're going to take losses. Yeah. And the idea is, well, are the losses worth the effort? Are the gains that you're going to get somewhere else going to be better? Well, what are the losses that we are going to suffer if we don't throw these people out of the country? The losses is that you've kept murderers in the country. The losses are that you've kept people driving trucks that don't speak English and are killing people on the roads. And so you've lost 2 protesters who were places they shouldn't have been, doing what they shouldn't have been doing, and you're saving hundreds of lives. So when you look at that, 14% are violent criminals. That's 14% of 400,000 people. That's a big number. The probability that innocent people are going to be killed is 100%. So there's no question that if you are well, is it worth the squeeze? It's worth the squeeze to get these people out.
There is so much out there. Like I said, it's sad that we have to wait, and we try to take our time, wait 24 to 48 hours before you comment on any of this stuff, because the proverbial dump happened. Once they lost the election of 2024 to Trump, they knew that they had to throw everything and anything at them, and they're going to continue. It's not going to stop. The beautiful thing about it is neither is the winning here in our country and the success. If indeed things happen as I believe they're going to this year, the best is yet to come. And the golden age, according to President Donald J. Trump, is going to be back, and we're going to take back our constitutional republic. I think we're on the way to do that. And yes, they weren't going to go down without a fight. I mean, gosh, they love their trans identity. They love to indoctrinate children. They love all of it. They love the green energy. They love the avatars. Oh, I'm sorry, I threw that one in there.
They love to take your gun away.
They want to take your gun away. They want to take it's funny. They talk about taking rights away. No, they're the ones who want to take your rights away. Hey, it's 5:04. I've got to get home to my beautiful wife because now we don't live very close to the studio, and I've got to pick up. Shout out to dinner tonight is Panda Express. Go out and get yourself some Panda Express. We're still living out of boxes, so we need a little Panda. I also, Mrs. Producer, she is going to have a glass of wine tonight. I stopped by and purchased a bottle of wine, but I also did something else, Chris, which I'm encouraging everybody to do that has a sweetheart out there, a significant other. It is Valentine's Day coming up here on the 14th. For all of those romantics out there, myself included, get your wife a little something. get your husband a little something. For the wives that are listening or the girlfriends that are listening, make it a great weekend. It's going to be a great weekend. Thank you, Boiling Point. There he is. Thank you for being here with us. We need to reconnect again, but make it special. Obviously, I'm going to make it special. Chris is going to make it special. And of course, I can't help but end the show as always by giving credit where credit's due, because without God, we got nothing. We can all lay claim to a lot of things, but we don't have a squat. So, dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the ability to have this microphone. We believe in this beautiful country that we live in. We believe in you because you are the one who put this together. You had a chosen nation in Israel. You chose Israel. In the United States, we chose you. And God, we trust. We are one nation under God. Continue to guide us and lead us and strengthen us in our ways. Continue to bring truth. Continue to bring people to the forefront that are willing to stand boldly and courageously in this chasm of divide. Bridge this divide, Lord. Only you can do that. And we pray this in the precious name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you. I love you. Chris loves you. But Jesus loves you more. We'll see you on Tuesday. Don't forget to buy your Valentine a gift. We'll see you then. Take care.